All right, guys, welcome back to Tactical Podcast. This is going to be Tactical Podcast number 12. Today, we've got Donny Pickard coming on here. Now, I first met Donny in a Krav Maga instructor certification course in Virginia, in Fairfax, Virginia. And I immediately kind of clicked with this guy, and we started talking about things. The thing that makes Donny really unique is his background. Now, not only does he have his Krav Maga instructor certification and teaches Krav Maga, but he goes a lot deeper than that. And this is really where the respect came in from me to him, is he has his purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's been doing it, since about 2001. Am I right, Donny?
Yeah, 2001 was my first official class in the gi,
Gotcha, okay. And you've been doing no-gi stuff before then?
Yeah, I was doing no-gi before that when I was getting into fighting and stuff.
And
MMA before it was, right?
Yeah, you actually fought Valley Tudo.
Yeah, it was neat, man. When we were fighting, MMA wasn't coined yet. There wasn't a term, mixed martial arts. They were still calling it Valley Tudo. For a little while, we played around with the no holds barred title, but that didn't stick either. Eventually, down the road, MMA stuck. But yeah, it was way back before the UFC got so big. It was still when they were fairly small.
That's pretty badass, man. Back when there was literally really no rules.
Yeah, that's a huge difference between modern MMA and when I was doing it. It was a lot more difficult back then. It was easier in a way that you didn't have the rules to deal with, but you didn't get to strategize within that rule set.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was one. It was way different.
And I think, honestly, man, that's really probably what got you good at thinking about it as far as a street application method goes, because it was like a fucking street fight back then. It really wasn't like this modern thing where you see, standing back up and da-da-da-da-da and all the rules and don't do this and don't do that. Wasn't it no biting and no eye gouging pretty much, right?
Yeah, the rules, and there was a slight difference between the pro and amateur, right? Okay. And to be a pro, you just had to have a certain number of fights, and then you got your card, right? Okay. But the difference in the rule set were very, very small. The idea was no eye gouging, no fish hooking, no biting, and I think we couldn't strike to the groin. And that was pretty much it. 12 to 6 elbows were legal, strikes to the spine were legal, kicking down opponents was legal. Damn. All of those things. And they weren't going to stop you and stand you back up until you were unconscious or you quit.
Dude, that's so different than today, and it's such a badass thing. Now, besides from doing the Valley Tudo stuff, man, you were actually also a SWAT officer.
Yeah, so I spent almost a decade in law enforcement just outside of New Orleans, and that's really what got me into martial arts. So I went through the academy and stuff and realized that what they were teaching us there was going to get us killed. Huh. It just trying to apply it in real life and against full resistance just never worked. Huh. A couple things did, but most of it never did. So I started looking for something else and started training with anybody and everybody I could. If there was somebody that knew some boxing, I was training with them. Wrestlers, I was training with those guys. Taekwondo, Muay Thai, just anybody and everybody was into the combat sports I started training with, and it was just kind of developed from there.
Now, was there, of all of the arts that you were studying while you were on the SWAT team and getting your first initial glimpse into the martial arts, was there a system that you liked best?
So I was actually pretty ignorant. I didn't really know enough about any of it. That's why I was sampling everything. But when I eventually fell into the jiu-jitsu, that's when I realized, okay, this is applicable for my job. Mm-hmm. I'm not just punching somebody in the face. I can actually get them into better positions for handcuffing and stuff than I could with any wrestling techniques. It just that fit for my job, right? So that's what I really started studying. And I did do striking and stuff still, obviously, because you need that. But in law enforcement setting, the striking was, not your best course of action if you could avoid it.
Sure. Now, when you're running into rooms with a long gun and doing that CQB stuff, and your hands are kind of tied up. I mean, with a weapons platform, how applicable is jiu-jitsu to that?
Man, it's hard. You're fully geared up. Jiu-jitsu's hard, and we still, from time to time, will train like that. We'll throw plate carriers and all of our gear on, and we'll hit the stall mats, not our good mats, and just to see. So the cops that I train with and stuff can figure out, a lot of this stuff doesn't work when you've got your bat belt and your plate carrier and all this other stuff on. You can't even do a crunch, right? So shrimping is out.
Yeah,
from
sure.
jiu-jitsu. So we play around with all that. You have to make modifications. The concepts are still there as long as you understand the limitations, right? No different than anybody with any type of physical limitation, I guess, if you look at it that way.
Sure. But I guess, you've also kind of got that weight distribution working on your side. You're heavier. I guess certain things like the cross collar would be applicable, but simple things, right?
Yeah, you would keep it really simple, and you're not looking for a submission to finish the fight when you're in a law enforcement setting, right? You're just looking to get them in handcuffs. Sure. Or to keep them from hurting somebody else, right? Sure. Definitely, by all means, if you can not put your hands on them, that's the best. Yeah. But having to deal with weapons and stuff, and you got to realize that every time that you're grappling with somebody, you've got a lot of weapons in that fight. You may be the only one that has them on you, but they're still in the fight. So the grappling stuff changes dramatically whenever you're into that type of situation. And but the footwork and the balance and the throws and all that stuff are still applicable no matter what you're wearing. So that's really was handy. To understand how to unbalance somebody and get them down on the ground easily was probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I could see that. I could totally see that. Just the understanding of, basic, I guess you could say more so basic wrestling or judo than anything else would be applicable for doing that type of thing.
Yeah, so I think so. Wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, anything that's got good, strong takedowns.
Now, when you guys are training in your academy, do you start from the feet or do you start from the knees? How do you guys do it?
We do both. It depends. A lot of times, if the mats are pretty packed, we'll start from our knees so we're not throwing ourselves into one another, right? Just as a safety precaution. If we've got room, then, hey, start on your feet. And if some people are, especially if they're preparing for tournaments and stuff, they're going to start from their feet every time.
Now, are you guys trying to do a lot of tournaments at your school, or?
It's totally up to the individual. Gotcha. It's not something I push. Yeah. I compete. Some of my students compete. Some of them don't. It's totally up to them. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's good for your training because you train differently. Yeah. Like heading into a tournament, you're going to be more focused. You're going to have certain things that you're working on. Your timing's going to be better. You're spending a lot more time in the gym. All these things. So I encourage people to train to compete because they just get so much better, so much faster.
I agree 100% with that. And I really think that when you find yourself in the middle of that tournament setting, that really prepares you so much better for a street fight. Just for the adrenaline, you don't know what's going to happen. You've got the possibility of, an injury. Everything's going through your mind, and then boom, it happens, and you got to go, go, go. It's such a really a glimpse into what it might be like on the street.
Yeah. The intensity in a competition match versus the intensity in a match in your school are different, right? You can get in there in a competition and be in there with people that are very, very serious about it. Yeah. And they don't care if they hurt you.
No.
Is it still controlled and still within the rules and stuff like that? Sure, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But you can't be somewhere else at all for even a split second or you end up either submitted or injured, right? And but yeah, the intensity and the mindset of going into it, you enter in. For me, anyway, I enter it as I am going into a fight that I know is coming. Yeah. Self-defense wise, we never know the fight's coming, or we have a very short time to prepare for it. Yeah. Competition wise, you're standing there on this side, and my mentality is I'm going into a fight.
And I feel like it gives you a new glimpse into it. Like, how do you think, as far as conditioning goes, for street fighting specifically? Because, like you said, you never know when it's going to be coming. Is it important to keep up that conditioning, not just by rolling, but also doing, your extra cardio, your running, your street work, your weights, all that? How important is that?
In general, in life, it's super important. Yeah. Right? As far as self-defense goes, it's still super important. For instance, for my kids' classes, the first thing we do is we start off with running. And they say, it's just an exercise. It's just a warm-up. No, we're actually practicing to run away when the time comes, right? And that is part of our technique for our kids. We don't finish the technique until we're running away. Mm-hmm. And so that being able to outrun absolutely is important. Being able to push somebody off of you, overcome them with strength can be important. All of those things. Technique, of course, conquers all. But strength, speed, agility, not only does it prepare you better for the fight, it also prevents injury and stuff. If you're in the middle of a fight and you get injured, that's a serious hamper. That could, change the fight no matter how good of a fighter you are. And the better conditioned you are, the more work you've done, the more likely you are to not be injured and survive the fight. So just become harder to kill.
100%. And I mean, that's the whole reason why we train, is self-preservation. And it's not only preserving your life in a fight, but it's also, hopefully, extending your life just in general. Physical fitness is paramount. Now, when you were going through the academy, and you were obviously in great shape when you were in the academy. Did you let yourself kind of lapse when you got out and became a street cop, or did you kind of stay in that mindset of, I need to stay physically fit?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, I was in fair shape going into the academy, and we did some work physically. It wasn't a ton. Everybody has this idea, and it may be different nowadays from when I went in, but when I was in the academy, it wasn't this boot camp thing. You didn't go out and you didn't do PT for 3 hours in the morning and every day or anything like that. So we didn't have this huge conditioning program. When I got out and started working patrol, because I was working in the jail when I was going through the academy. So I was working full-time, going to the academy at the same time. And when I got out and got on the street, that sedentary sitting behind a steering wheel for most of the day, and except when you get out talking with people, and poor nutrition choices and stuff. I put on a little weight, got out of shape, and I looked at myself one day in the mirror. I was like, this is a problem. I need to fix this. So and then started getting into better shape and taking care of myself and really getting into physiology. How does the body work? What can I do to get into better shape? What is nutrition about? Starting to really educate myself back then, and had a couple of buddies that were into it and a couple other cops, and we started just doing it on our own and got to be a lot hitting the gym, little gym rats and training rats, and gotten in way better shape. So it was good overall.
It's funny you say that, because I found the same thing in the Fire Academy. I expected to go in there and be doing, PT, push-ups, sit-ups, running, all that. We did very, very little of that. It was a lot of classroom, a lot of on the fire ground, all that. And, I was in decent shape. But when you get out, it's too easy to get into that sedentary lifestyle. You see a lot of, at least firemen, putting on a little bit of a gut, because you're not always running around doing this type of thing where, you're not always going to calls. And I never thought of it really with cops in the academy. I always assumed that you guys kind of did more PT than us, but you're so right about sitting in the car, eating shitty food, and then you got to snap into a point where you get to, like you did, and you say, enough is enough, let me take back control. So what did you exactly, can you walk us through a couple of ways that you were able to get yourself back into killer shape?
I started off with nutrition. Looking at what I was eating and what was causing me to pack on pounds, right? Because I knew something was different. Yeah, if I hit an age to 23, 24, something like that, where you start slowing down anyway. But I started off with nutrition, kicking out all of what I thought were good for me, sports drinks and things of that nature. And I didn't know better, so I started educating myself, reading labels, paying attention to what I was putting in my body, and started noticing a difference and finding out what worked for me. I was friends with a lot of bodybuilder types and fitness types, so started pulling in some of their nutritional plans. Okay, how do the bodybuilders do it? Oh, they're on this low-carb diet whenever they're getting ready for a competition, but they're on a high-protein, high-carb diet whenever they're bulking. And, so hanging out at the gym, talking with a bunch of people, talking to some nutritionists, and just getting an education more than anything else on nutrition. Then that made a difference. Then I started hitting the gym. I was doing a lot of weight work at first, and realized too that, okay, cool, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting bigger, but I can't run a block. So that's a problem. So then I started throwing in some running. And I hate running. I hate it with a passion. I'd rather fight, but I do it because you have to. Started doing that and training, and then I got into the fighting stuff and started realizing that my nutrition and extra weight training and other physical activities that I was doing did they do good for my fighting, or did they do bad for my fighting? Were they positive for it, or were they taking away from it? And started just trying to do the things that were just positive, and that made a big difference. So that was way back in the day, and I still wasn't nearly as smart about it as I am now, and I've come a long way since then. But it worked at the time.
Donny, it's funny, man. Back then, we just didn't have the science, and it's not like it was that long ago, because, I remember that, so it couldn't have been that long ago. But at the same point, we have come, in the last fucking 10 years, man, even 8 years, we have come so far in nutritional understanding, science, sports science, than where we were back then. So, I give you props for back then figuring it out all on your own. Now we've got YouTube, we've got this and that, crazy different things that anyone can learn. But, learning the bro science from the guys at the gym has always kind of been a rite of passage of someone trying to get in shape. But when you talk about, you mentioned a very interesting thing about training for martial arts, whether it comes to nutrition, strength training, cardio conditioning. It's so much different than training for bodybuilding or strength training or just getting in a good physique. Can you give kind of, the warriors that are listening here, your take on, what exactly have you found that works for you as far as training for the martial arts specifically?
Okay. Yeah, no problem. And I have this conversation with people fairly regularly, actually, and it comes down to mindset for me, is how I think of my food. Okay, I think of my food simply as fuel for my body, and I understand, or I ask myself the whys. Okay, why am I eating this? Why am I eating it now? Why is it good for me? All these. Why am I eating what I'm eating, and why am I eating it when I'm eating it, and why am I eating it in the volume that I'm eating it? Okay, so if I look at it as fueling my body for a specific task, it completely changes the way you look at food, and that works. Okay, I know that on my high activity days, I'm going to need more calories. I know on my days that I'm going to be lifting weights and recovering the next day from it, I'm going to need more protein. But studying my body over the years has led me to that, and it has been a lot of trial and error. But you can tell if you pay enough attention to your body and you're in tune well enough, you've been eating clean. You eat well, you go in and have a good day in the gym, or 2 days in the gym, or a good week in the gym, and then you go out and eat something that's a little off over the weekend. You come back the next week and your performance isn't there. You can go back and look and say, how did I blow my fuel? What happened with my fuel supply that caused this poor performance? Just like a car, right? I got something bad in my gas. And that in and of itself has been a mind changer for me, a huge game changer, actually.
I feel like it would be. It's so important what you put in your body. Guys just don't think about it. It's so easy, especially these days, to eat kind of like what tastes good. But what tastes good isn't necessarily good for you.
Well, it takes work. You gotta, I know that for breakfast I'm having 2 eggs and they have X amount of protein. I'm having a piece of toast and it has this much, of all your macros. You pay attention to that stuff. You pay attention to what you're putting in, know how much of each thing you need and why you're putting it in and why you need it, and then it's a lot easier to understand.
Yeah, no doubt. So Krav Maga, dude, I'll be honest with you here. And, since we went through that initial instructor's course, I've got my own opinions on Krav Maga, and I've definitely talked a little bit of shit about it. Not about Krav Maga specifically, but about the way that they train. I think personally that it's not 100% applicable because of the lack of force-on-force training. There's not a lot of sparring that goes on. How are you kind of getting around that issue of going beyond that point where, yes, you've learned the techniques, now it's time to be able to apply them under a stressful situation better?
Okay. Well, I think Krav Maga, just like anything else, it all comes down to who you're learning from.
Yeah.
And what their mindset is. I've been very lucky to have a really good Krav Maga coach, and started way before that. We went through that instructor's course, and I shopped for him. I went around and went to different Krav Maga schools until I found the guy that was like, okay, this guy's doing it right. And how do you do it? You pressure test it. You spar. That's how you figure out if it works or not. That's the only way. Yeah. What we did wasn't that. Yeah. What we did, honestly, the school that hosted it, none of those guys could fight.
Yeah, I know.
It was sad. Yeah. And the guy that is my coach, he completely got out of that organization because of exactly what we're talking about. It was too soft. It never went to the test. It never, we never pushed it. We never, and he and I would, or me and Erin, other folks, we'll get together and beat each other up and see if it works, But it wasn't set into that school, or into that curriculum that we were in. They never showed it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that school was more of them trying to force you to teach how they wanted you to teach, rather than trying to explain to you what Krav Maga is and how it can be used. There's a ton of different Krav Maga schools out there. There's a ton of different affiliations and stuff like that you can be under. Some are good, some are bad, but it comes down to the individual school and the individual coach. So we've gone from taking Krav Maga as classes, like weekly classes. We now do them only as privates. We found that selling self-defense was almost impossible here. Right? Selling Krav Maga is almost impossible because people get online, they see some of the stuff that people are doing, and they're like, well, this is a joke. And they're right. What you see online is, a lot of it is terrible. Yeah. And so we incorporated, there was some lacking, in the Krav Maga world of ground fighting, and I had that conversation with my coach a lot, and I think getting rid of what doesn't work in one system and adding from another system stuff that does is the way to go. Yes. Krav Maga striking, there's only one or two, there's not much there. Go do some boxing, do some Muay Thai, do some kickboxing, something like that. Get good striking, add that into the defenses of Krav Maga. You want to fight on the ground? Go do jiu-jitsu, go do judo, something like that. Add that into your Krav Maga defenses. So that's kind of what we do. We take the defenses that are solid from Krav Maga, like how not to get punched in the face or how to take a gun from somebody, and incorporate that from there. Once the defense is done of Krav Maga, then it becomes you beat them like a kickboxer or you grapple them like a jiu-jitsu guy. Right? Then so that's how we're handling it. And we also have the next step of, okay, I've got a gun on me. I've got a knife on me because I'm a concealed carry person. Everywhere I go, I've got a gun. I've got to be concerned about that. Yeah. And how to incorporate that tool if you need to, and how to not have it enter the fight unless you want it to. So all of those things are taken into consideration. That's kind of how we're trying to evolve it to make it better.
I love that you say that, man, and I think it's so key what you guys are doing. It's like Bruce Lee said, take what is useful, reject what is useless, and then kind of add what is your own. And whenever you can do that, it just put off a spark in my head saying, hey, listen, Krav Maga has some very valid techniques in it, but, you don't need to get caught up in one system versus the other. You take what works and you leave what doesn't. And I like that you guys are doing that in your school. By the way, what is the name of your school?
The name of our school is SALVOS Training. People always ask us, well, is that your last name or something? No. Salvos, actually, when we were looking for a name for our school, we wanted something that spoke to what we are all about. And if you look up the Latin version of salvos, what it means is to survive or survival. So, and that's what our school means, survival training. And that's what we're about.
Yeah, and I like that stuff. It's brilliant, to be honest with you, that, number one, you have this extreme background, SWAT, vally, tudo, MMA fighter. So you're able to kind of take that really street-proof and effective, highly effective grappling and MMA stuff, kickboxing, and then mix it, with the straight-up street survival stuff of, weapons, Krav Maga, multiple attackers, that type of thing. It really makes it so much more effective. Now let me kind of wipe the slate here and interject something kind of that we're dealing with right now, everyone in the world is dealing with, is this pandemic. And the fact that there's a lot of people who are nervous out there, quite frankly, that this thing has the potential of taking society as we know it fairly south. People are nervous that they might have to start living in a little bit different of a world, and I think you know what I mean by that, having to survive, actually survive, a little bit differently than we have been. Can you give us any kind of tips, tactics, things that you might think people need to know going forward as far as how to stay safe in a challenging time like this?
Yeah, and it depends, obviously, on where you are and what your personal needs are. Right now, the biggest concern that, from what I understand, is overwhelming our medical facilities and medical personnel and stuff like that, and not being able to get to everybody that really needs it, which is why we're trying to limit the spread. Stay home. That's one great thing to do. If you don't have to be out, don't be out. I mean, you're going out there right now, grocery store shelves are fairly empty. Everybody's looking at you kind of sideways. You can literally feel, I don't know about where you are, but you can literally feel the tension and anxiety amongst folks around town.
Oh, 100%. Out here, man, it's fucking crazy. And I've been saying this is going to come for a long time, but here we are. And you literally walk outside and you can cut the tension with a fucking butter knife, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. You know, for me, what I tell everybody, the biggest thing of survival is pay attention to what's going on around you. And, use the Nike defense anytime you can. You put on your Nikes and run. Get out of there. Right? I
like that.
And don't be worried about offending people. That's a big thing that I see with a modern society in America, is we're too polite. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings by telling them to get the fuck out of my face. Mm-hmm. Right? We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by telling them to stand away because I don't trust you. You know, if I can take my self-defense people and give them the permission to be a little more rude or a little more, I don't know what the right word is, but don't be so worried about how somebody feels if you're keeping yourself safe.
Yeah.
Right? That in and of itself gets people into more trouble from everything that I've seen, is them being too nice, letting people get too close, and then something happens.
Yeah.
Right? And it's no different here. Somebody may want that bottle of water that you have in your hand.
Yeah.
Somebody may want that sack of groceries you just left the store with, or whatever, right? Don't let them get too close. Don't be afraid to say no, especially now.
That's
if you feel
advice.
Those little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, pay attention.
Yeah, no doubt. No, solid advice. And I think, honestly, as advice goes for situations like this, that's probably the best I've heard so far. It's simple, but it's what you need to do. You know, that New York mentality, that New York state of mind. Hey, get the fuck back. I don't know you. That type of thing. Absolutely 100% effective. And, as far as, guys wanting to train and everything, look, if you haven't started training already, you're going to have to wait until this thing blows over, unfortunately, because everyone's freaking closing. Like, I think my gym, and I'm not going to say too much here, but my gym's like one of the only ones still open because these guys just don't care. They're just that hardcore. But at the same time, it's... Look, I'm not going to give my opinion on that, but it's irresponsible to be open if you want everyone to be quarantining. You guys have closed, right?
Yeah, so we've shut the doors for a couple weeks, mostly because we don't know, and secondly because my partner is also a medical provider, and if something happens where she has to be quarantined for a month, that's a problem, right?
Yeah. So I think it's so responsible. I gotta say, I think it's so responsible that you guys are doing that. It means that you're trying to be part of the solution and not just, whatever, there's been epidemics before, we'll be fine. Yeah, you might be fine, dude. You and I are in good shape. I know, your partner's in great shape too, but what about, you go home and you have elderly parents, grandparents, something like that. You don't want this thing to spread any more than it, is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be responsible for killing grandma.
No, me neither. Me neither.
So yeah, but what we have done, or started doing, is using online. So we'll get on video. We're going to hold our classes at regular times, and we're going to do them over the internet. And hopefully people can train a little bit at home. I did a private yesterday with somebody, and it worked out pretty well. I'm going to do a private tomorrow too. So
that's
all
awesome.
online. So it'd be kind of cool.
Now, if guys from across the country, we're shut in right now. We want to, get some training. No one else is really doing that, to be honest. Now, are you kind of offering that to people outside just your student base?
No, just to our students.
Okay.
They're paying us to stay, to have a gym, and they're paying me to teach them.
Okay.
So I don't feel good about not doing what they're paying me for.
Gotcha. So if someone else wanted to say, I'm over here in Virginia, but I'd like to do a couple of sessions, with SALVOS training, that's kind of off the table as of right now.
Yeah, it's something that I would consider doing. There's an organization out there that I'm part of called the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Globetrotters.
Okay.
And there's a couple of coaches on there that have set up online webinar things, and coaches from all over the world are getting on there and coaching classes, and with the stipulation of basically keep paying your home gym, and we're going to teach you online for free.
Wow.
Now, if somebody was in that type of situation where they were out, like I said, in Virginia, and their school was shut down and nobody was teaching them anything and they wanted to be part of that, I'd be okay with that. Yeah. But pay your home school. Make sure they keep their doors open so whenever this is over, you still have a gym to go back to.
Exactly. And, I was going to say that too, is like, look, schools are shut down right now. It might be 2 weeks. It might be a month. But at some point, things are going to go back to normal here, and we're all going to be able to start training again. So,
right.
I feel like this is a good time to do more of your mental training, more of that situational awareness type stuff that, you were talking about before, and recover. Get your nutrition in and recover.
That was huge too, and I've been telling a lot of my students that. It's like, take this time to do, all the things you've been, putting off. Yeah. Do your stretching, do your foam rolling, spend time in the sauna, do all the self-care that you haven't been able to do. Let those little nagging injuries heal. Yeah. It's good sometimes to take a couple weeks off. Let your body refresh.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think this is going to be good for all the serious martial artists out there. And like you said, we've all got nagging injuries, and maybe they can stop bothering us for a little while. So do you think that, I'm just going to throw this out there, and if it sticks to the wall, it can, and if you don't want to talk about it, just feel free to let me know. Do you think that this whole epidemic is a natural thing from bats, or was it like created in a lab? What's your kind of vibe on this thing?
My opinion on it is that it was man-made.
Yeah.
So when I was watching all this kind of unfold when it first started back in January, we're also watching some information about some Chinese nationals that were arrested for spying.
Yeah.
And some of them transporting live biologicals.
Yeah.
They were busted doing that. They came from a certain institution here in the States, from one lab, and the guy that's running that lab also had all of his graduate students and stuff were Chinese nationals, except for a couple. They have him set up in the Wuhan Institute of Technology as part of their nanobiology lab. There's a whole lot of coincidence there that just to make me think it's not natural.
It doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. And I think I read an article about a Harvard professor or something like that. Same
what
deal.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's suspicious. Now, do you think that it was initially kind of... Do you think that this is something for population culling? Do you think this is something for control? Do you think this is something... What's your vibe on that?
I think it's a test run.
Yeah.
For a delivery system. And also some engineering, because if you notice the populations it's not touching at all, it's the teenagers and younger. Yeah. Nobody shows up with it. Nobody has it. Nothing. Population control, since it came out of China, it's a good possibility.
Interesting.
But it's been a good test run for emergency preparedness stuff, which is, if we're looking for a silver lining, those of us that have, over the years known that something would happen, we get to see how the world reacts and get to figure out a timeline on things, so we're better prepared and better educated for the future. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, see, I'm totally with you on that, man. And I've been saying that even on a national level here for our government, we've never had to deal with this. And I think that the silver lining, like you said, is that this is going to make us better for responding to an epidemic or pandemic if it should happen to ever, Lord forbid, come around again.
Right. Yeah, and I'm coming from South Louisiana. We had hurricanes, several a year, right? So all these people running out to buy stuff that they don't. I'm like, you didn't have this stuff already? Because
I know.
You spend a few weeks in South Louisiana without electricity, you kind of learn.
And they're buying the weirdest shit too, man. Like, all the meat's gone, and all of the freaking canned soup is still there where I am. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? I went out yesterday. I wanted to find some heavy whipping cream. There was none left. Like, who the fuck is buying all this heavy whipping cream?
Right. What are you doing with that?
What do you want with it? Like, we got to make some ice cream sundaes right now because of this thing.
Right.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's nuts. I see the stuff people are buying. I'm just like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah.
Like, and they're just grabbing whatever they can. They put no thought. You can tell there's no previous thought. Right?
No, none. Like, what do you like? Why are you leaving all the canned beans and you're buying all the meat? Like, that's gonna go bad in 3 days. Like,
right? Yeah. Why are you shopping at the grocery store? They got the bulk.
Yeah.
Place over there down the street. That's where you need to be. And Most people don't even have any idea of how to preserve stuff.
No.
If the power goes out for 2 weeks, they'll like, what do we do? Have they thought about water? Do they have it stored? Do they have filtration systems, cleaning systems, anything like that? Or are they just gonna they're just buying cases of bottled water?
Yeah.
Like you'd be better off spending $20 on that water filter.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's important to have water filters. I feel like just because the water quality in the States isn't exactly what it used to be anyway. But and it's it's funny. People will. I think when this thing blows over, people will start to be thinking a lot more preparedness minded.
I hope.
Well, you would hope at least. I mean, there's a lot of sheep out there that just. I talked to a couple of ladies at the grocery store yesterday, or the day before, and they were in frank denial. They were saying, well, those people who are buying all this stuff are stupid. I don't know why they're just panicking. And I'm thinking in my head, like, lady, like, you don't understand. Like, you've got one frozen pizza and, like, some milk. Like, you need to be buying a lot more than that.
Right. And it's, okay, we have this all goes sideways. A ton of people get sick. There's all that stuff's brought in by train, truck. If all the people that drive those are sick, how's the stuff getting there?
Exactly.
People just don't think far enough down the road. They don't understand like where everything comes from. We're so disconnected from our food source and our water source anymore that people just have no idea how it gets to the grocery store shelves.
Yeah, no, they don't even think about it. They just assume it's going to be there.
Yeah, supply chains are so easy to interrupt. I mean, if you think about, warfare tactics, what's one of the best ways to shut down an army? Cut off their supply chain.
Yeah.
And that's what can happen if everything goes sideways. People get sick. Hey, nobody out there to drive the trucks. Nobody out there to load the trucks. What do you do?
And that's another reason that, out here in the East, we've been seeing mandatory curfews be put into place. And, early on, which I'm thinking, hey, like, I get it. Like, they're limiting the number of people in restaurants at a time. And even now they've said you can only get takeout from restaurants. But why the curfew? What the fuck is the purpose of the curfew if you're already not having people in restaurants and bars? It just seems weird.
I've never understood a curfew.
Yeah.
Even when I was in law enforcement and they had them for hurricanes and stuff, I'm like, oh, why? It's not going to change the weather.
Like, I get it if it's like a civil disobedience thing. You don't want people out there in the middle of the night. But it just seems like you're really kind of pushing people into a corner here, and it's only going to be so long before they start to like be huddled in their homes and freak out and then start getting a little bit rebellious.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's a weird situation, man. It's neat to watch. I started doing kind of a little log of day by day what's going on, and getting my timeline down of how things go sideways in America right now. It's crazy.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea. I definitely think that we should all get on board, and all the warriors out there, the protectors out there, we should all be kind of like taking as many mental notes right now as we can. You never know when shit might actually go south with this one, but Lord forbid, and hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully we move on to the next one more prepared and better equipped to handle what's coming down the pipeline, inevitably.
Yeah, for sure. And also, we're protectors, sheepdog, whatever you want to call us, wolf hunters, we have to be concerned about the people in our communities too, right? There are people out there that maybe would be better prepared if they had the means to.
Yeah.
Or had the ability, the physical ability to go do it. So we need to, kind of be aware of your neighbors and check on them and help protect them as well. Protection isn't always with a gun. Sometimes it's simply just checking on somebody and letting them know that they have a neighbor that's available. I think we could, if we do this right, use this pandemic as a community building thing. Everybody come together. If everybody can come together over this, we can put a lot of our differences aside and find out we're maybe not so different after all. We can settle down some of this nonsense that goes on between people fighting. We talk about training, you get on the mats and start training with people. It doesn't matter race, religion, creed, sexual orientation. None of that stuff matters because you get punched in the face, it hurts no matter who you are, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. You have a mutual respect for everybody.
Exactly. And we have that because we train. Other people don't. If we could use something like this as a tool or a vehicle to have some of that come about, that'd be awesome. So I always try to find good in the bad. So
For people out there that are like us, sheepdogs, there's going to be inevitably people in your group, or at least in your, everyday life that you contact, that you're going to need to be able to convince them of something. You're going to be needing, like you said, to use your words and your actions to kind of like guide them like the sheep they are in the way that you need them to go. Do you have any tactics or, from your policing days, ways of kind of making people do what you want them to do, what you know is best for them to do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's a whole, several classes in psychology, right?
For sure.
But what I find works the best, and this is true whether it's law enforcement talking somebody into a set of handcuffs or coaching a martial art or being a parent, right? If you can talk with them, explain to them what's going on, and have them come to the decision on their own.
Yeah.
Things work so much better, right? And how do you do that? Man, it depends on who you're talking to. Let them know that it's, take the curse off of it. I'm not forcing you to do anything, right? You do this because I say so, because a lot of folks will just immediately rebel, right?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of let them know why and why it benefits them. Show them the benefit to them and how it's easy for them, and then have them make that decision. Like, oh, you know what? That is pretty easy. I think I will go ahead and do that. Or, show them examples of other people not doing or being what you're trying to get them to be, and how it turned out bad for them.
I like that. That's good. Yeah, dude. There's so many dynamics that go into the art of survival. It's always been so fascinating for me to look at this, and there's so many different disciplines within the martial arts, and then you go into the self-preservation, survival mindset, and I'm glad that you're out there, that you've got Salvos training going on, and you're really teaching people kind of the right ways to do this, guiding them away from the McDojos and the wrong ways and the bullshit. It's really good to see. How can guys get in touch with you? And you guys are in Oregon, if I'm right.
Yeah, we're out in Oregon. We're about an hour or so east of Portland in the Columbia Gorge. A beautiful place. Man, I'd love for you to have to come up and hang out with us for a bit. If we've got a website, salvostraining.com. We're on Instagram at salvos_training. We're on Facebook. Emails, just an easy way. So instructor at salvostraining.com will get to me. Our phone number, 541-769-1199. I'm most likely the one that's going to answer because we're a small place. However, we're pretty easy to find. Google it, you'll find it. We've got, like I said, shut down for the next couple weeks, but we've got a beginner's course coming up. We're supposed to start the 31st of March for jiu-jitsu, because just jumping right into that kind of a shark tank for some folks doesn't feel good. So we said, hey, we'll do a 6 weeks course, and it'll come with a uniform, and you can learn the basics, all the terminology and positions and stuff like that. So if anybody's interested in that, it's a pretty good deal. All that information is on our website and stuff too.
I like that you're doing a beginner's course. When I jumped into jiu-jitsu 3-4 years ago, it was sink or swim, and it was most people couldn't hack it. Most guys that came in lasted a couple months, and that was it. And I think for you guys to be offering a straight-up beginner's course, hey, these are the basic positions, this is the terminology, it's such a leap ahead of what most schools do. And, I'm sure, look, if you're in the Oregon area, or even if you're, in the surrounding states, you got a couple of weeks or whatever it takes, I think that's a great idea, Donny, to offer these guys a beginner's course, because it's a daunting task.
Yeah, it is. And we're, hoping people will stick it out a little longer if they feel like they're getting somewhere. And the way I've started teaching over the past few years, a little different, more of conceptual based. So I kind of explain to people how things work, why things work, and show them some examples, and then have them find it for themselves. Because we eventually make the art our own anyway. So why, your art is going to be different than my art, so I shouldn't force you into my pigeonhole. Yeah. But if I explain to you how and why and such, and let you find it on your own, it seems to accelerate the learning curve. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, you guys aren't only doing straight jiu-jitsu. You guys are also involving, the street stuff, weapons, striking. Yep. Yeah.
So, every pistols, carbines, knives, both offensively and defensively. We've got our simulator, our firearms training range in our facility. It's the Milo system, so same one that the cops and military use. That's pretty cool. So we can do firearms training in-house. We've got our live fire range right across the river to go do firearms training on that.
Great.
It's pretty cool. So we kind of try to run the gamut, everything unarmed and armed combat. So
that's amazing. I wish there was a place like that out by me. Now, until I can get out there, I'd love to come out one day. We'll shoot a YouTube video. We'll freaking hit the range and have some fun, man. But until then, I'll definitely be looking at your page, and I would highly encourage everyone out there to check out SALVOS_training on Instagram, right?
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Outstanding. And, bro, I want to thank you, first off, for coming on, taking the time, and you've had some amazing information. I've learned a lot from this podcast, and we'll definitely be in touch in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. It was really good to hear from you again, and I'm happy to come on. This was my first one, so kind of awesome. I appreciate it.
Well, hopefully we can get you back on at some point, man. I always ask guys towards the end of these podcasts, if it's been a good podcast, if anything comes up in the future related to the particular field that you're in your case, that would be kind of survival and reality-based combatives. Look, if you don't mind, from time to time things happen. We want to get expert opinions, so maybe we'll have you back on in the future.
Well, I'm always here, man. If you want, I'd be more than happy to. And I'd love to have you come out sometime if you ever get this way.
I greatly appreciate that, man. Well, listen, guys, until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense. Don't joke around about that. These are stressful times that we're living in, but as warriors, we will all get through it. And I will catch you on the next podcast. Cheers, Mother Flowers.